As guests gathered for what was meant to be a routine spring engagement reveal, the air in Buckingham Palace turned icy. A press bulletin flashed across screens, blindsiding even insiders. King Charles had abruptly cancelled Queen Camilla's charity tour. But what came next? A decision that sent the entire royal staff into chaos. Catherine, Princess of Wales, would replace her. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. What began as a simple announcement spiraled into whispers, glances, and nervous phone calls, echoing through royal corridors. Reporters scrambled. Advisors froze. The palace press office had pushed the statement live within seconds, with no warning to those who should have been in control. The shock was not just external, it rippled inward, touching every corner of the institution. In private, confusion hardened into tension, because not even those closest to Camilla had expected such a public blow. Word spread quickly that she had not been informed before the announcement went out, and that revelation alone shifted the atmosphere from surprise to something far colder and far more dangerous. Behind closed doors, aides who had worked tirelessly on Camilla's itinerary watched months of preparation dissolve in an instant. Flights, meetings, speaking arrangements, all erased with a single directive. Meanwhile, staff connected to Catherine were suddenly thrown into frantic planning mode, struggling to piece together schedules that had never been meant for her. The hurried calls, the late-night discussions, the sense of urgency, all of it pointed to one truth. This decision had not been coordinated, it had been imposed. Those who witnessed the king's demeanor describe a tone so terse during the pre-brief that even seasoned advisors were left unsettled. His words were clipped, his instructions final, and there was no invitation for debate. That sharpness, that insistence, sparked speculation. Had Charles acted alone? Had something shifted behind the scenes, something powerful enough to override protocol, partnership, and perception? And then came the images. Paparazzi lenses captured Camilla leaving Clarence's house, her expression tight, her posture rigid. No statement, no smile, no attempt to disguise the impact. The photographs traveled faster than any official narrative could, fueling theories that the rift was deeper than anyone dared admit aloud. Within hours, whispers began circulating. Perhaps the king hadn't consulted her at all. Perhaps the monarchy was no longer moving in step, but in tension, with every decision carrying the weight of unspoken rivalry and unresolved history. What unsettled observers most was not the public explanation, but the silence around it. A silence that hinted at bruised pride, at decisions made in haste, and at a shift in power dynamics unfolding behind velvet doors. Catherine's name now stood where Camilla's once had, and that single substitution carried echoes of something larger, a quiet realignment that no one was prepared to confront openly yet. But this was no simple substitution. Behind the king's decision lurked a web of rivalry, regret, and quiet defiance that had been building for months. For months, Queen Camilla had positioned her charity tour as a royal masterstroke, a chance to cement her global presence. So why was it suddenly pulled from under her? The answer, sources say, lies in behind-the-scenes blunders and whispers of waning public support. At first, it was hailed as her signature moment, a sweeping multi-nation tour across the Commonwealth, hand-picked destinations, private receptions, and keynote appearances carefully designed to place her not just beside the throne, but firmly in the heart of royal diplomacy. Camilla's office had worked tirelessly to ensure each stop reflected her personal values and patronages. But as the date drew closer, something shifted, quietly, then catastrophically. Invitations once confirmed were now returned with vague apologies. Government liaisons abroad grew hesitant. What started as subtle unease snowballed into full-blown logistical collapses. Leaks from inside diplomatic circles revealed that several high-profile hosts had discreetly withdrawn support, citing internal concerns, a phrase that raised more eyebrows than it settled. Behind the scenes, her charitable foundations began to falter. Campaign targets were missed, donor enthusiasm dulled. The numbers didn't lie, and in the corridors of royal finance, whispers turned to worry. The image Camilla had tried to polish post-coronation was beginning to fray at the edges. The media, once cautiously supportive, began probing inconsistencies. Reports began circulating that she had grown increasingly controlling in her press dealings, allegedly demanding edits to coverage and clashing with editors over headlines. To the public, these were minor ripples, but to Charles, they were signs of something deeper. Sources close to the king suggest that he had grown weary of the distractions. He too had sensed the shift. And when the palace's internal polling landed on his desk, showing a stark drop in Camilla's favorability, it was no longer a matter of optics, it was a matter of preservation. The final blow came in a hushed meeting long after the palace halls had emptied for the night. Senior advisors, summoned under the guise of a routine briefing, were presented with a brutal truth. The tour had become a liability, not just for Camilla, but for the crown itself. It wasn't only about bad press or diplomatic embarrassment, it was about protecting the future narrative of the monarchy. The king, said to be grim but resolute, made the call then and there. Cancel the tour, quietly, firmly, irrevocably. No second chances, no rescue strategy. The order was to pull the plug and replace the face. And so, with Camilla's agenda sidelined, a new figure emerged not just as a substitute, but as the crown's rising hope. She wasn't expecting the call. Catherine, comfortably withdrawn at Anmer Hall, was reportedly stunned to receive a direct message from the king. What began as a request soon revealed itself to be a royal command, and one that would spark a quiet fire within her. The timing couldn't have been more disorienting. Catherine had intentionally stepped away from the royal whirlwind, focusing on family, reflection, and selective patronage engagements. But this message pierced through the silence, unmistakably deliberate and curiously personal. No intermediaries, no formalities, just a clear and urgent directive from King Charles himself. He wanted her to step into the role Camilla had just lost, not merely to represent the crown, but to restore what he called the face of faith in the monarchy's future. For a woman who had carefully measured every public step, this was no ordinary ask, it was a collision of duty and doubt. Those close to her describe a moment of stillness, even resistance. Catherine knew the implications. She wasn't simply being asked to attend a few events, she was being positioned as the new emissary of the crown on the very path Camilla had just been pushed off. The optics alone would be explosive. The court would whisper, the tabloids would scream, and her every move would be watched for signs of rivalry, arrogance, or overreach. She voiced concerns, reportedly asking whether this decision was being made out of strategy or desperation. But the king was resolute. It wasn't about calendars, he insisted. It was about symbolism. She represented youth, unity, and continuity. In his words, the world no longer needed reminders of what the monarchy had been. It needed a clear vision of what it could become. Prince William, ever her shield and sounding board, listened more than he spoke. Though his support never wavered, those present during their discussions say he expressed caution. He knew better than anyone how fragile the balance within the royal family had become. The timing, the optics, the silent turf wars, it was all too volatile. Still, Catherine's mind shifted. The hesitation didn't vanish, but it transformed. What had once felt like pressure began to stir something deeper. Purpose. Behind the scenes, the palace staff began reorganizing at a pace that betrayed how unprepared they truly were. Schedules were redrafted, security briefings reissued, and speechwriters quietly shifted tone from Camilla's voice to Catherine's warmth. But not everyone embraced the sudden pivot. Senior aides loyal to the Queen consort reportedly bristled, some even requesting reassignment. The power shift was no longer theoretical, it was administrative, practical, visible. And while Catherine moved forward with calm resolve, the fractures within the palace grew deeper. Yet none of this seemed to slow her. She absorbed the tension, accepted the weight, and pressed forward not because she sought the spotlight, but because the future of the institution was no longer something she could afford to observe from afar. Her preparation was quiet but charged. She was about to walk a path designed for someone else, one fraught with echoes, expectations, and unspoken comparisons. But as Catherine readied herself to carry the crown's cause abroad, Camilla was not retreating quietly. Behind palace walls, Queen Camilla wasn't mourning, she was maneuvering. While no public statement came from her office, palace insiders report closed-door meetings, abrupt firings, and an unsettling coldness that chilled even her most loyal aides. There was no denial, no spin, no token gesture of unity. Camilla simply fell silent, and that silence became deafening. It wasn't the silence of retreat, it was the silence of calculation. She refused to issue any statement of support for Catherine's abrupt substitution. Days passed. Press inquiries were redirected. Requests for comment were met with clipped acknowledgements and nothing more. Her absence from the narrative was deliberate, even defiant. Internally, the Queen Consort's meetings took on a new tone. Those who attended described the atmosphere as stifling, measured words, slow nods, and eyes that no longer concealed their fury. Gone was the warm, grandmotherly charm once paraded in tabloids. In its place, a glint of something far colder. Her fury didn't need a voice. It radiated through action. Trusted staff were quietly removed from projects they had long overseen. Others were demoted, reassigned, or dismissed entirely. Those once seen in her inner circle began to step back, uncertain of how to navigate a woman whose influence seemed suddenly uncertain. They felt the tremor. The ground beneath Camilla was no longer solid, and her decisions reflected the fragility of that realization. She began reaching out not to the press, but to the very foreign hosts who had once confirmed her appearances. Letters, calls, even intermediaries were sent to explain her unfortunate withdrawal and, according to sources, to suggest that the change had not been her choice. These efforts were neither authorized nor encouraged by the palace, which only deepened the schism between her and the royal machine now aligning around Catherine. Behind the scenes, tensions between Camilla and Charles reached a sharp crescendo. The setting was Windsor. The audience was private, but the voices, according to one insider, were anything but quiet. Charles, already burdened by the consequences of a decision he could no longer soften, reportedly confronted Camilla over her resistance to the new public arrangement. Her response was swift, emotionally charged, and unfiltered. She accused him of staging a performance, of sidelining her without cause, and of feeding the same media circus they had long tried to tame. He, in turn, warned her that defiance would not protect her legacy, that if she continued to challenge the new narrative, the consequences would be irreversible. Then came the words that echoed beyond the walls of Windsor. Aides reported hearing Camilla refer to Catherine's tour as a theatrical stunt, crafted to win headlines, not hearts. The words weren't shouted, they were whispered. But whispers in the palace are never truly contained. And once those words escaped, they spread like fire. To some, they revealed Camilla's bruised pride. To others, they signaled her deepening isolation. But just as tensions brewed behind the velvet curtains, Catherine's public debut on the tour would turn up the pressure to boiling point. Cameras flashed. Chants echoed through the Nairobi air. As Catherine stepped onto the tarmac in Kenya, the reception was deafening and completely unexpected. Crowds carried signs bearing her name, and cheers drowned out the welcome protocol. No one had predicted the scale of it. Officials had prepared for a standard diplomatic welcome, but what unfolded felt more like the return of a beloved leader. From the moment her feet touched the ground, the energy shifted. The tour, originally crafted for Camilla as a cautious extension of goodwill, now exploded into a cultural moment. Catherine wasn't just stepping in, she was being embraced. Her presence didn't just replace the absence left behind, it redefined what royal outreach could look like in a new era. Locals wept as they saw her, calling out blessings, lifting children to wave. And in a moment that would become immortalized online, a spontaneous choir broke into song, naming her the light of the new crown. Within hours, the footage had gone viral. But the triumph didn't end at optics. Her first major engagement, a visit to a hospital once championed at least on paper by Camilla, brought an emotional gravity that no camera could fully capture. Catherine walked the same halls, met the same doctors, but this time the commitment felt real. During a private moment with a grieving mother who had just lost her child, Catherine embraced her, whispered something unheard, and held her for far longer than protocol demanded. That single clip, captured by a bystander, became the defining image of the tour. It wasn't orchestrated, it wasn't rehearsed, it was raw, and the world felt it. Local leaders, once cautious about the abrupt royal change, publicly reversed course. They praised her compassion, her sincerity, and above all, her humility. It was not lost on them that this woman had stepped into another's itinerary, yet managed to make every stop her own. Speeches were adapted to her tone, agendas were restructured around her style, and as Catherine quietly carried on, the narrative began to shift. What had started as a substitution was now being hailed by global media as something far more profound, a symbol of renewal, a modern face of monarchy, unburdened by historical shadows. And yet, in all the international coverage, one name was conspicuously absent: Camilla. Not in mentions, not in references, not even in comparison. The silence surrounding her presence was louder than any critique. She had vanished from the narrative. As Catherine's image rose, the Queen Consort's influence seemed to evaporate. Editorials once sympathetic to Camilla's journey began to pivot, subtly questioning her place, her impact, her future. The focus had changed, and it wasn't going back. Back in London, the reactions were anything but celebratory, and the Queen Consort had reached her breaking point. It happened behind closed doors, but the fallout was impossible to hide. Queen Camilla, known for her composure, reportedly confronted King Charles in a furious exchange that rattled Clarence House staff and left the monarch visibly shaken. What unfolded wasn't a minor disagreement. It was years of tension erupting at once. Insiders say Camilla demanded answers, accusing the king of slowly making her irrelevant, of allowing her role to be diminished in front of the world. Her voice, usually disciplined and measured, carried something darker: betrayal. She wasn't simply angry about the cancelled tour. She was wounded by what it symbolized. The subtext cut deeper than logistics. In her mind, this wasn't about schedules, it was about being quietly replaced while still standing beside the throne. Sources describe the clash as emotionally charged, with moments where the king struggled to respond. At one point, the conversation reportedly pivoted toward an old wound neither of them ever wanted reopened. A reference, whispered but unmistakable: Diana's shadow. The idea that history once again might be repeating itself. The comparison hung heavy between them. For Charles, it reopened memories he had tried to bury beneath duty and time. For Camilla, it felt like proof that no matter how far she had climbed, she could still be eclipsed in a single decision. Aides nearby heard fragments, raised tones, pauses, long silences. Those who witnessed the aftermath said Charles appeared torn, caught between his loyalty to his wife and the brutal realities of public perception. He knew the monarchy lives or dies on image. He knew Catherine's presence was stabilizing the narrative at a critical moment. And yet, he also knew every step forward for the institution risked looking like a step away from Camilla. That impossible balance pressed on him with a weight only a sovereign understands. Senior advisors, alarmed by the shift, began urging caution. Their counsel was blunt: step back before it damages the institution. Not a warning about optics alone, but about legacy. They feared that if the Queen Consort openly challenged the new direction, the public would see division where unity was desperately needed. But the suggestion that she simply retreat, accept, and remain silent only deepened the fracture. To her, it sounded like a polite invitation to disappear. Soon after, quiet signs of retreat began appearing anyway, though not the kind the palace had hoped for. Engagements were quietly dropped from her calendar, appearances postponed without explanation. Charities informed that scheduling conflicts had arisen, though none could quite identify what those conflicts were. It was as if she was slowly extracting herself from a stage she believed no longer welcomed her. And while the public only saw brief announcements, those inside recognized what was happening. The Queen Consort was pulling away not out of dignity, but from hurt. Yet even in withdrawal, she didn't surrender the resentment forming beneath the surface. She believed she had been moved aside, not out of necessity, but out of preference. And that belief, whether justified or not, was becoming dangerous. Because behind every quiet cancellation, there was a question forming in her mind. If the monarchy could thrive without her, what was she left standing for? But as royal drama unfolded in private, Catherine was unknowingly moving into a role she never expected to claim. One photo, one frame. That's all it took. As Catherine visited a school in Uganda, an image of her smiling with children, wearing a brooch once worn by Queen Elizabeth, went viral, and it sparked a conversation neither Camilla nor Charles could ignore. The photograph wasn't meant to make headlines. It wasn't part of a grand strategy. But in a royal world where symbolism speaks louder than statements, the image detonated like a quiet bomb. The brooch, a rarely seen heirloom of the late Queen, had been carefully chosen by Catherine's team, but its impact was far beyond what anyone had anticipated. The public instantly understood its meaning. It wasn't just jewelry, it was a message of continuity, of silent endorsement, and of a lineage that now seemed to favor one woman over another. Overnight, headlines crowned her not as the stand-in, but as the torchbearer. The response wasn't just admiration, it was reverence. Across media channels, editorials began to draw sharper lines. Comparisons that had once been avoided out of deference now flowed freely. Camilla's charity efforts were dissected for formality and distance. Catherine's appearances were celebrated for warmth and sincerity. The monarchy's reset, one paper declared. Another simply titled their editorial "The Queen We Chose." The tone was no longer diplomatic, it was decisive. And inside palace walls, that decisiveness was echoing louder than ever. When the photograph was enlarged and placed in a prominent corridor of Kensington Palace, sources close to Camilla said she was livid. The placement wasn't ceremonial, it was personal. It signaled a shift that had moved from whispers to walls. One royal aide reportedly described the moment as the soft coronation, a subtle yet devastating indication that the court's emotional energy had shifted decisively in Catherine's favor. Camilla, already isolated, now saw the institution itself beginning to shape a new narrative, one she had no role writing. Foreign dignitaries took note. Embassies sent formal letters not to Clarence House, but directly to Kensington. Invitations, collaborations and tour requests were now being directed to Catherine's office with an urgency that hadn't been seen since the early days of Princess Diana's reign. It wasn't just about diplomacy, it was about visibility, and the world had made its choice. Perhaps most telling was the quiet repositioning of donor interests. Several long-standing Royal Foundation supporters began redirecting funds and public support toward Catherine's initiatives. Meetings were cancelled, pledges reallocated. It wasn't hostile. It was calculated, an evolution in real time. Donors, politicians, and cultural leaders weren't waiting for the monarchy to make an official declaration, they were writing it for them. But as admiration surged, a final twist in London would expose just how far this shift had gone. Every year, the Royal Winter Gala draws Britain's elite and every senior royal. But this year, a chilling detail emerged: Camilla's name was missing from the official programme. And in her place? Catherine, listed beside the king. The omission was first noticed by palace watchers, then seized upon by the press. At first, officials scrambled to downplay it, with Charles himself insisting it was a clerical oversight. But no one bought it. Not the journalists who knew better, not the dignitaries who whispered in the hallways, and certainly not the members of the court who saw this as more than a scheduling error. In a monarchy where every detail is vetted a dozen times before it goes public, mistakes of this magnitude are rarely accidents. The symbolism was staggering. A gala that once celebrated tradition had now, whether deliberately or not, drawn a stark line between the past and the future. Camilla's name was not just missing from the booklet, it was missing from the evening itself. Her please reply, once submitted, was quietly withdrawn from public records. No reason given, no apology offered, just silence, a silence that said everything. And as the royal procession entered the ballroom, there was no mistaking the shift. Catherine, adorned in regal gold, moved not as a guest, but as a queen in waiting. She stood beside King Charles, not one step behind. International guests sought her out first. Global press centered her in every frame. Conversations circled her every gesture. She had become the gravitational force in a room that once orbited someone else entirely. Whispers gained traction as the night progressed. Trusted sources hinted that Charles was considering a public reassignment of duties, a subtle yet irreversible rebalancing of representation where Catherine would gradually take over ceremonial appearances, high-profile patronages, and perhaps even the symbolic roles that once belonged to the Queen Consort. There was no official confirmation, of course. But in the monarchy, change rarely arrives with a formal proclamation. It reveals itself in small details: the order of entrance, the seating charts, the photographer's flash angles. And that night, all signs pointed in one direction. Behind palace doors, insiders confirmed what many had long suspected. The frost between Camilla and Catherine was no longer speculation, it was fact. Their relationship, once carefully cloaked in civility, had grown irreparably cold. Meetings were avoided. Communication filtered through aides, mutual appearances reduced to rare, strained encounters. And now, with the Queen Consort's exclusion from the gala, the divide had become institutional. Then came the most haunting detail of all. According to a source close to Clarence's house, Camilla had watched the event alone, not surrounded by family, not in defiance, but in stillness. As the live coverage aired across screens, she sat in the quiet of her private room, witnessing a transition she could no longer stop. The camera never cut to her. The headlines never mentioned her. The evening passed as though she no longer existed within the royal script. To many, that image, unseen but deeply felt, was the most powerful moment of the night. But this wasn't the end, it was the prelude to a deeper power shift within the royal house, one the monarchy had not seen in decades. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.